What was he saying? He's saying it's a good thing or a bad thing to have people coming into your country, or what is your problem?
Well,
In his humble Langabeer house, 78-year-old Errol Musk sat alone. His once sharp eyes had become less so as the years had worn him down. As memories of his son Elon, a brilliant, defiant youngster who had matured into an ambitious man, resurfaced, he drew a shaking breath for the first time in years, letting himself feel the burden of all he had attempted to hide. He muttered, "I was the one," with tears in his eyes. In this quiet place of his mind, Errol Musk came clean about something he had hidden for a long time. The home in Pretoria, South Africa was impeccably organized and worked smoothly when it was Errol Musk's residence. The patriarch's belief in the need of facing life with courage and resilience was something he wanted to inculcate in Elon, his eldest son, from the start. Errol found no place for sentimentality or sensitivity in a society dominated by sharp distinctions and concealed threats during apartheid-era South Africa. His household mirrored his view that self-control was vital to ensuring one's own existence. The rules were rules, and Errol's word was law, even if Elon was just a youngster. Yet Errol treated him like a soldier in training. He had hoped his son would grow up to be resilient and resilient. He often said, "If you're going to make it in this world, you'll need a tough skin," his voice carrying the authoritative quality he got from his father, an army sergeant. Errol planned to teach his kid the hard way that life is merciless, just as he had learnt from a young age. Elon did not get the same level of care and nurturing as other children when he was growing up. A father's love, according to Errol, is best demonstrated by equipping his kid to deal with life's challenges. Instead of watching cartoons or playing, the weekends were reserved for schoolwork and self-control. Every morning started with some sort of physical activity, whether it was jogging or trekking in the great outdoors. After that, Elon would spend hours upon hours studying, with Errol frequently supervising him and offering constructive criticism or encouragement to help him improve. It was love in Errol's sense, but Elon felt its burden rather than its warmth. Elon felt different from his classmates even in their affluent area. Some dads were more amiable, gentler, and maybe even more accessible than others, but Errol was unforgiving. He made his son follow rules that grown-ups would have thought oppressive. Early on, Elon understood that it was unacceptable to show weakness, so he learned to suppress his concerns and tears. If his father's actions were ever called into question, Errol would quickly and harshly respond, "You're a Musk. We don't make excuses. We do what we must." Errol possessed material wealth. He amassed $1 million by the age of 30. Living in one of the most opulent mansions in Pretoria, the Musk family enjoyed a life of unparalleled luxury. As a public display of his wealth and success, Errol sent his children to prestigious schools in a convertible Rolls-Royce. The Musk home, despite its abundance of worldly possessions, was cold and unwelcoming. There were clear boundaries and expectations for each child's role. Even when he was around his brothers, Elon felt alone, and this feeling of isolation only intensified with time. Everyone was putting pressure on him to live up to their expectations. He was aware that his father thought the world of him. Errol would frequently bring up the fact that the Musk family was full with engineers and leaders, all individuals who had achieved great success due to their brains and determination. Errol would remark, "One day you'll be known as the best of us." Yet his words always had an air of authority, more like an order than a forecast. While he was learning these things, Elon had ambitions that were too big for his father to fathom. Imagining a world outside the organized boundaries of Pretoria, he would lay awake at night, enchanted by the stars outside his window, even as a little youngster. He confided in his father about his aspirations to become a world changer a few of times, but Errol's response was abrupt and uncaring. His response would be, "That's nonsense, Elon," as he dismissed the suggestions as unrealistic assumptions. "Focus on what's real, on what's here." While Errol saw his son Elon's desire and determination, he also noticed an unruly, almost rebellious curiosity that escaped the confines of the Musk home. As Elon started to have ambitions that extended well beyond Pretoria, this focus intensified. He confided in his father one day when he was 7 years old and said, "I'm going to be a millionaire." Errol scoffed at first, but Elon's determination was unshakable. His expression was one of intense concentration as he declared, "You'll see." Errol was filled with a mix of emotions, including pride in Elon's resolve and a hint of fear that his own kid would one day outdo him. Success meant the world to Errol, but he also believed he had achieved it all by himself. A subtle conflict existed between him and Elon, since he was mentoring Elon while also feeling that he was competing with him for his son's future success. His pride in Elon's potential, he insisted, was unencumbered by jealousy, thus he ignored these sentiments. The depth of their relationship, however, increased in tandem with Elon's aspirations. There was no denying Elon's precociousness. He wanted to know why, unlike other kids who were happy to just play or follow along. All he needed to do was figure out how things worked from the inside out. Elon would sit down next to Errol and examine the mechanical parts he had built for his engineering projects with a level of concentration befitting a youngster. Ideas that sparkled like stars would light up his thoughts as he devoured books on space, engineering, and science at night. Those who attempted to keep up with him were occasionally overwhelmed by his insatiable thirst for information. At the age of 9, Elon sat down to supper with Errol and talked about a rocket science book he had read. Errol nodded in agreement, but he was clearly preoccupied with something else. Upon realizing it, Elon paused in the middle of his speech and fixed his gaze on his father. "I don't understand." He spoke with an unusually incisive tone. The sharpness and anger in his son's statements caught Errol off guard. It was as if Elon were always on a different frequency, a one that not even his exceptionally intelligent father could quite understand. Even though they were few, these times did sow the seed of estrangement. Although Errol respected Elon's intelligence, he occasionally disliked the way his son probed him, as if Elon were overly confident and daring. An elderly man blew out his cigarette and laughed as Elon Jr. told his loved ones he was going to become the wealthiest man in the world. "Dreams are for kids," he said, his voice dripping with scorn. "You'll figure it out in due time," Elon said with a fixed stare. "I think you're stupid," Elon said. The guests were surprised, but Errol felt a strange joy. Clearly, his son was a free spirit who didn't care who got in his way. As Elon matured, his aspirations broadened. He shifted his focus away from monetary matters. Things that would revolutionize society were in his head as he built them. Concepts as fantastical as space travel, renewable energy, and extraterrestrial cities intrigued and worried Errol. Some of Elon's fantasies, according to his father, were diversionary tactics that kept him from pursuing his real calling. "Stop worrying about the things you can't change," he would gently advise Elon. Even though Elon was told, "The rest is just nonsense," he still couldn't control his thoughts. When Elon's parents' marriage fell apart when he was 8 years old, it left a scar that has never healed. As the relationship between Errol and May worsened, the already rigid and occasionally frigid Musk home became much more so. Arguments and a subtle tension that persisted even in calm times added instability to days that had previously followed a strict, nearly regular pattern. Even though he was too little to really comprehend the gravity of the situation, Elon could feel it all. Little by little, the rock upon which he had built his life was crumbling. That was all he knew. There were too many underlying issues and layers of grief for the divorce of Errol and May to be an easy one to resolve. As a soft contrast to Errol's demanding personality, May's kindness and calm resilience had served as a grounding influence for Elon. However, she started to distance herself as the marriage crumbled. Because of the burdens she bore from her own tragedies, May felt emotionally aloof and unapproachable. Seeing his family fall apart and feeling helpless while the two individuals he relied on were driven apart by their own insurmountable differences was a tremendous emotional roller coaster for Elon. Elon was left with a decision that seemed too big for his young shoulders when the divorce was finalized. He could live with either his mother or his father. He had the last say. Elon was captivated by Errol for reasons he couldn't really comprehend. even though May had a certain tenderness and warmth that he lacked. It may have been because he looked up to his ambitious father, or it could have been because he believed he would face greater difficulty in Errol's world and would have to prove himself, a route that seemed more in line with his developing aspirations. The hope that he might win Errol over by remaining with his father may have played a role as well. So, Elon made the tough choice to move in with Errol, a decision that would impact their lives for years to come. The lessons in perseverance he learned growing up in his father's home weren't free either. No one was around to act as a buffer or a soothing voice to mitigate the effects of Errol's regulations now that May was gone. Unforgiving standards and, at times, seclusion became the norm in the Musk household. Day by day, Elon felt the increasing strain as Errol's expectations continued to rise. Unspoken but constant were the demands. There would be no room for failure, and any sign of weakness would be confronted with strength, not displayed. Because he lived with Errol, Elon was always put to the test. He had to keep up with a man who didn't believe in giving in to weakness or showing emotion. Errol thought his kid had to be ready for whatever that life threw at him, since life was a battlefield in his view. Over the weekend, Errol would assign a variety of projects and assignments designed to foster self-control and competence. It may be an engineering class one day and a difficult maths issue the next. Anytime Elon showed signs of being frustrated or exhausted, Errol would glance at him with a penetrating yet detached gaze and remark, "Only figure it out." Elon soon understood that this was a constant response. There are no shortcuts. For Elon, Errol's inflexible enforcement of his philosophy, that hardship was a teacher, made him feel more like a student than a son. No matter how many times he succeeded in pleasing his father, he would just receive a nod and a few words of appreciation. Even though things were becoming heated, Elon persisted in trying to win over his father. He was hell-bent on meeting his father's unattainable expectations. Last but not least, a controversy involving Errol's private life broke out years later, and the couple was never the same. Even though Elon had grown accustomed to his father's quirks and rough edges, the dispute nonetheless rattled him. Despite their disagreements, Elon had always looked up to Errol as a model of self-control and success, yet the new information about his father made it impossible for him to relate to the man he had always held in high regard. An announcement by Errol that he had fathered a child with his ex-stepdaughter Haida Bazen-Hout brought the story to light. Even though she was 40 years his junior, Haida had been an integral part of Errol's life ever since she was a little girl, when he was married to her mother, Haida Sr. Elon saw the news as a complete and utter betrayal, even if it astonished everyone else who knew the family. Not only was this a strange and contentious relationship, but it also crossed lines that Elon found quite unpleasant. Not only did Elon feel morally terrible about Errol's connection with Haida, but it also destroyed any respect Elon had for his father. Elon remained silent once the news surfaced. He cut ties with his father. A mix of sadness and rage washed over him as a result of Errol's irrationality, as he had always placed a premium on logic and reason. Elon had put up with Errol's strict parenting, his incessant demands, and the icy home life, but this connection with Haida seemed like an act he couldn't forgive. It was more than a slip of the tongue to Elon. It was a rejection of all that he thought his father had stood for. Elon took a very personal interest in the Errol Musk affair, while the rest of the world used it as tabloid and gossip column fodder. Elon perceived a guy whose behavior appeared to belittle the discipline and morals he had previously enforced on his son for many years, while the general public may perceive merely a headline, an unusual turn in the life of a contentious character. Now that Elon felt like a stranger, Errol had disproved the same principles he had preached: responsibility, honor, and resilience with this one action. The public's reaction and Elon's criticism didn't appear to bother Errol too much. He had previously told a reporter, "The only thing we are on Earth for is to reproduce," ignoring the scandal as if it were insignificant, and this candor continued when asked about his connection with Haida. He saw his choices as representations of his convictions about life and freedom, and he didn't think they were scandalous or deserving of criticism. However, Elon felt that these comments made the pain worse. That his father's principles were fundamentally at odds with his own was further confirmed by these events. Distancing oneself from one's father became more pronounced. What gives this father, who had set such high standards for his children, the gall to act so carelessly? Elon had left for the United States to further his profession by this point. The cornerstone of his future empire was being laid by him. When Elon did discuss his father in an interview, he was careful and aloof. Although he did recognize Errol's impact and the ways in which his father's intellect and abilities had shaped his own aspirations, his tone lacked any trace of affection or warmth. Elon, on the other hand, seems to have severed links to his past with his remarks, opting to go forward with an unburdened future free from the burden of family scandals. He was hell-bent on establishing his own reputation and realizing his ambitions apart from Errol's legacy. While Elon Musk's popularity soared, Errol Musk stood by, proud but acutely aware of how far away they were. Elon's first taste of real success came when Compaq acquired his firm, Zip2, for about $300 million. Zip2 was an online city tour platform that had attracted the interest of investors. From his secluded existence in South Africa, Elon made a huge leap to becoming a millionaire before he aged 30. This left Errol shocked and uneasy. Though he had faith in Elon's brilliance from the start, seeing his son accomplish such phenomenal achievement seemed like something out of a faraway dream. It was a strange and bittersweet experience. The discipline and resilience that came from Errol's strict parenting style were obvious, but he had no hand in shaping them. Elon had achieved financial independence and was now motivated by ambitious goals that went beyond conventional business acumen. He subsequently co-founded PayPal's predecessor, X.com, an online payment network. Another watershed moment occurred with this endeavor. Elon's work started to garner substantial media coverage. The young South African tycoon's daring ideas catapulted him to the attention of big investors and IT magnates, and he was suddenly a magazine cover star. The disparity between Elon's life and Errol's became more apparent as his celebrity increased with each new achievement. Errol was aware that he had a conflicted attitude to Elon's accomplishments. While he was proud of his son's achievements and the impact he was having on the world, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy at how Elon's life had blossomed into something he couldn't comprehend. All of this success, the money, the celebrity, the innovative projects, was something that Errol had hoped for in the past. Living out that ideal, his kid was now outdoing him in every manner imaginable. Errol struggled to come to terms with thoughts of inadequacy he had never faced before as he faced the difficult truth. It seemed like Errol's life was getting smaller and smaller as Elon achieved new milestone after milestone. Elon was enthralled by the world of invention, while his son Errol stayed in South Africa and had a peaceful life, apart from his son's revolutionary innovations. Many of Elon's friends and acquaintances came up to Errol to offer their congratulations on Elon's accomplishment. They wanted to know how it was to have a boy of your stature. While on the outside Errol would seem friendly and nod, on the inside he would be burdened with feelings of loneliness. He was no longer an integral part of Elon's life. At best, he was a bystander. SpaceX performed its maiden rocket launch. After initially floundering, electric vehicle upstart Tesla positioned itself as an industry game-changer and started to gather traction. As a visionary who dared to defy the impossible, Elon's renown was expanding beyond the tech industry, and he became a global celebrity. This stardom was quite isolating for Errol. His son had transformed into a guy whose aspirations appeared to have disregarded his family, and he scarcely recognized him. Even in their few exchanges, Errol saw a difference between the son he had nurtured with such great hopes and the stranger he was interacting with. Even though Elon had become a worldwide celebrity, Errol felt like he had lost his son to the limelight. The son he had always envisioned for his family seemed irretrievably far away, and he could no longer relate to Elon as he had transformed into. Errol would think on the principles he had attempted to inculcate in Elon and the decisions he had taken in his more reflective times. He pondered whether Elon had been turned off by his strict parenting style, which had emphasized self-reliance and discipline. The initial public comments made by Errol on Elon were unexpected. He spoke frankly about his criticism of Elon's life and choices in an interview. His statements were colored with an enviousness he couldn't fully conceal from the world. He called Elon's accomplishments child's play and admitted his kid was stupid. Errol's remarks were harsh, particularly in light of Elon's achievements and the esteem he enjoyed on a worldwide scale. But they were the only words that Errol could find to convey his complicated emotions of hurt, pride, and fury. He characterized SpaceX's accomplishments as commonplace, downplaying their significance. People have been sending rockets to space for decades, he said, ignoring Elon's pioneering attitude and his projects. He made derogatory comments about Tesla and implied that electric vehicles had always been the industry's natural progression. Any motivated individual, in his view, could have replicated Elon's achievements. But underneath all that criticism was a deeper anguish. The knowledge that his kid, who had become an idol to people all across the world, had abandoned him in some way. When Errol voiced his disapproval publicly, Elon took note. As part of an unusually candid interview with Rolling Stone, Elon discussed the hurt he felt because of his father's actions. His father's actions had taken an emotional toll on him, and the world finally saw it. Elon described him as such a terrible human being throughout the interview. As he recounted the times when his father had been particularly severe, he showed how profoundly his formative years had been impacted. Despite his best efforts, the interviewee was unable to overcome the wounds inflicted by the person he had previously admired, and the man's struggle to reconcile with his past persisted. Both men had shared the realities they held in their own manner during their partnership, and their public quarrel was the last painful chapter of that chapter. Unexpectedly, Errol Musk had aged over the years. He had been used to living alone by the time he was 78 years old. While his children had emotionally and physically distanced themselves from him, one day flowed smoothly into the next. The son who had gone on to rule the globe but had abandoned his father like a ghost from another age, Elon in particular, felt like a figure from another time. Over time, Errol's pride started to crumble, and a subtle melancholy settled in. The years started to weigh heavily on Errol one night as he sat alone in his little abode. From a battered picture frame on a side table, he took a snapshot of a young Elon, his eyes shining with the same unmistakable resolve that would characterize him for decades. Sitting still, he gazed at the picture, reminiscing about his son's formative years in Pretoria when he was a curious and seemingly hungry young man. His thoughts wandered back to those simpler times. At that moment, he was really proud. He had encouraged Elon more than was necessary since he saw greatness in him. However, while reflecting on the youthful eyes gazing back at him, he came to terms with the magnitude of his losses at the age of 78. Their relationship had been progressively weakened by his ambition, desire, and unrelenting demands, all of which had taken a toll. The occasions when Elon sought his father's approval, when he sought solace in his presence, and Errol's response was one of indifference or criticism, these were the moments when Errol finally allowed himself to realize how he had contributed to the divide between him and his son. He was unable to suppress a sob that welled up in his throat. He clenched the photo even more tightly as tears welled up in his eyes, making it hard for him to see clearly. "I was the one," he whispered quietly. "I was the one who shoved him away." The irony was how basic but deep the reality was. Finally, it was then when Errol Musk lost it. It was a heartbreaking separation between father and son. But could love, no matter how wounded, mend it? Could the shards of pride and remorse be smoothed over by the passage of time, allowing each to perceive the other not as representations of their wounded past, but as individuals who had tried their best, however imperfectly. Even though we didn't know the answer, the beauty of the prospect was that it might heal even the deepest wounds, if we were both ready to try. In your opinion, did Errol Musk encourage Elon's ambitions? Leave a comment and tell us what you think. Your feedback is much appreciated. Okay, we're leaving now. I will see you in the subsequent video.